Welcome back, conscious listeners. I am here today with Ellie Gervais. She is a spiritual, conscious, mindful, spiritual, everything coach. And she's here joining me today to get the conversation rolling about spirituality, wellness, health, mindset, all kinds of things. So, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. It is a pleasure to be on your podcast and just a pleasure to be able to talk with you ever. I'm so excited.
Yes. Oh my gosh. For those of you who don't know Ellie, she is so magnetic. She is such a force. Like her personality and just her warmth shines through no matter where she shows up and no matter how she shows up. She always is showing up in her authenticity, and it's just really inspiring to be around. So yeah, you guys will get a flavor of that today because she's wonderful and I'm so honored to have her here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm smiling so hard right now. You're so sweet. And I could say and feel the exact same way about you. I remember the first time I met you, I just knew we would click. I just loved everything that you were talking about. I loved the energy that you brought into the room, and I was always looked forward to seeing you. So I'm just so happy that we've been able to develop such a wonderful friendship, and you expand my life so much. So thank you so much.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, my hope today is that we, yeah, just get to be real with people and just get to say what's on our minds and what's on our hearts and what we're passionate about. And, like something that I've been really just been on my heart and on my mind lately is like this pedestal idea of like, there's people we really look up to and we put them on a pedestal. And like that's like one part of the idea. And then the other part of the idea is like, can they help us like get into our empowerment of being who we really need to be in the world, like living our life on purpose. And then like the other part of that is um, like absorbing so much information and really finding what clicks and works for us and then like putting that out into the world. Like the other thing I've been really ruminating on is like, okay, it's one thing to like learn all of these things, and then it's like a whole different thing to implement that and to like put that into your practice, into life. And like, what if the way you're trying to live, if you're trying to take more conscious steps, like, what if that's different than the status quo? Or what if that's different than the world around you? What if you're like standing out because you're following a different path or taking a different step or trying a different edge? I'm sure you see this in your clients too, of like people really
Mhm.
want to be guided to change, and then it's like their environment is so surrendering to the way that things are because it's so much easier than saying, wait a minute, I actually could have the power to make a change. Wait a minute, it's not just my influencers that can make a change. Like,
Oh my God,
I have this
yes.
in me too. Like,
Yes.
feel that or experience that at all?
1000% on both ends. I have been on the end and still am on the end of me putting people on pedestals and looking up to people and being caught in this frame of consciousness where I don't know if I can achieve what other people have and do. And we play that role of comparison there. And yeah, that is definitely something that is interesting. We were just talking about this, how we think that these people have these huge impacts on our lives, and we see them living their life and doing all these things, and we're like, wow, like it's so inspiring, and it's such an important role that they're playing because they are expanders for so many people. They allow them to see that you can have this lifestyle too. And I love, especially when they call it out, they're like, you can do this too. It's like, okay, thank you for that reminder, because sometimes you just need it. um and so I'm certainly on the end of it in that sense. I look up to a lot of people, and I'm always, especially when you're looking up to people who are in a place or a position that you desire to be in, and you're not there yet, you're like, okay, well, there's a big between me right now and them. And it's really easy to get caught up in that. But I think one thing that keeps me grounded in where I am and keeps me able to meet myself where I am is just to surrender to the idea that my unique journey is going to bring me exactly where I need to be, just like theirs did for them. And I am not in control of that journey entirely, and surrendering to the idea that that is perfectly okay. That's how it has to be for me to embody my unique, authentic self. And so, really, just like reminding myself of that. And then on the complete opposite side, it's so cool. If you think about it right now, the life that you're living right now is likely something that you wished at one point that you had. You were trying to manifest it into your life. For instance, I used to live and I had an Adderall addiction and I had multiple eating disorders. And all I wanted in my life, all I wanted was to be free of those things. For years, that's all I wanted. And I never really imagined myself getting there. I just didn't know how to. And now I'm here and I help other women get out of their own toxic cycles that they're living in. And it's so cool to look back and be like, wow, I remember writing in my journal like affirmations of how to get out of this. It's all I wanted. And now I'm here. So it's really important to also reflect on how we grow as individuals. And yeah, I work with my clients who, they see me as somebody healed from a lot of the cycles that they're in right now, whether it's eating disorders or addiction or um, whatever cycle they're living in, and they see me and they're like, "Oh, well, she got out of it." Like they're in my position when I'm looking at, the other people that I put on pedestals, and I um I just remind them that their journey, I remind them exactly what I remind myself is like, yes, I'm here now, and yes, you're there now, but that doesn't put you any wrong place at all. It's going exactly how it's supposed to right now. And having the support of, they're reaching out and getting support. So by doing so, they're already calling in what they desire. So yeah, I think it's just interesting how there's always that dynamic kind of existing between where you are and where you kind of want to be, but we have to remember to meet ourselves where we are, because that's really where everything happens, is in the present. Um, so yeah, what do you feel about that, Jennifer?
So fascinating because it's like, in a lot of ways, like how you mentioned, right? Like our future self has us to thank. And it's like, if we're in this here now moment, we're constantly participating with like our past self, our future self, and our current self. And then, like,
Totally.
we don't always participate with everyone else's like past or future selves. It's usually like their current self. And I wonder too about, like, I know social media is so accessible, and I wonder too, it's like if we really did know more of like their past, or, you know, maybe before they started their accounts or things like that, because
Mhm.
I think it's a totally normal desire as humans to like want to be better and want to improve and want to grow. And it's like we really could use more of the compassion. We could use more of the like the wisdom in the mistakes and the wisdom in like the discomfort, right? Like what if
Totally.
that could be a gift? What if that could be a gift of like, I need to feel uncomfortable for this in order to like know what the next step looks like? Because if it wasn't uncomfortable, like would I get to where I want to go versus
Totally.
like maybe I don't even know where I want to go. Maybe I think I know where I want, and maybe how you mentioned like the universe might have bigger plans more so than like what we even think or know we want or what's possible. And that's what's so cool about like the influencers or the people in our field
Mhm.
that we so want to meet like in their worlds. And
Right.
it's just like, oh yeah, like it does take what it takes, it takes as long
Exactly.
as it takes.
Yeah.
And like, not to rush it, but really like, yeah, building in those reminders of like, how can I enjoy today for what it is? Because today is a gift. Like, we
Completely.
woke up today, we were granted another day, like our heart is beating, like we are alive. Like I saw this person this weekend at a farmer's market, and her tattoo said, have the courage to live. Everybody can die. Anybody can die. Have the courage to
That's
live.
that's so awesome. That's such a good reminder. All of this is such a good reminder. Like what you're saying about how we all kind of like see this finished product, and also how you were saying that people there's like so much pressure to live in a certain way. Like society wants us to be so busy and to have such like linear goals and this like achieving mode, and then we see these people online who have like already done it, and we never see the process of those really scary moments and those leaps that they had to take, or like any sort of uncertainty and living in the discomfort. And it's a really good reminder for me because I often am in those places of like, oh, I've never done this before, and obviously I'm uncomfortable because it's something I've never done. We're not going to be comfortable in these zones of unknown. Um, and so it's just a good reminder. I think like I need to start putting more out there of like, here's the in between. We really value the transformation that is already done. You know what I mean? Like we love to see transformations of people like their skin going from bad to good, and like they see the end result, and we see like people rising from the ashes, and then transcending into this great version of them. And it's like, well, what about why don't we look at that huge in between and all of the steps that took to get there? Like we never really value that like in between. And I think hard work is valued, but it's not emphasized, and it's not normalized to be on social media for people to be in those in between stages. And I think that it can make people feel really disconnected from influencers or people who have managed to call in something that somebody else wants. um there can feel like such a disconnect because there's no explanation on the how. And I think people really like to get caught up in the how. And I don't necessarily think the how is always important because it's going to, like I was saying, it's different for every single person. Your how is going to be perfectly uniquely tailored to how you operate and how the universe operates with you. And so it just kind of feels like a mystery sometimes. And people are like, well, what happened? How'd you get there? Um, and yeah, so I just think that's really interesting how there's that gap, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that flavor of like accountability that you just brought up of like, oh, like people want to know how like you can help them facilitate change, but like it's that accountability of wait a minute, like I'm holding a container for you. You get to rise to the occasion. You get to invest your time, your resources, your efforts, your willingness, your courage. Like you get to do all of those things. It's almost like giving people their power back of like, wait a minute, you're in charge of your journey because we're so used to school and we're so used to like
Mhm.
getting the grade and making the mark. And that's another conversation of like the power and control dynamics of
Totally.
authority in the school system, whether that's the teacher, the principal, that it's like we're kind of shifting out of that and coming more into the fact that like people are waking up to the power that they have.
Completely.
And it's like mind blowing because if we knew how much power we had, whether that's through meditation, through mindfulness, through like all of these tools that can't make a profit off of us, right? Like if we were taught to access those things that already exist within us, it's like then we wouldn't have all these like ailments or like quick fixes, or how you're saying like people really want to see this quick fast turnaround of like personal growth and transformation, but like it takes as long as it takes, and like the level of
Complete
commitment, the level of like everything, environment has so much to do with it. Like it's like the
that's
planting of the seed. And
totally. Oh my god, I love that. There's this quote, and I'm not gonna remember who it's by, but the quote is, "You are very powerful, provided you know how powerful you are." And I love that quote because we only have as much power as we know and believe ourselves to have.
Mhm.
And you're so right. We are not taught our inner power. We're not taught the things. We don't understand that we can heal ourselves, that I think we look externally so often, and we were taught to reach externally for support and to help our own personal power. And I think that there's a beautiful time and place for support and guidance. I really do. I think that having, that community or person or whatever it is absolutely amazing and so monumental for so many people. But I think it has to coexist with this own personal reflection of what your power is. Because at the end of the day, you can have all the support, all the guidance, all the friends, and all the community in the world. But if you don't recognize your own inner power and your own part in your healing, and that you are your own healer, um, I don't think that I mean, I think that's really the key is, like, when you understand that, that is, like that's it, that's the lesson there. Um, and that's when we can really start utilizing and transcending and transforming, is when we understand that it comes from within ourselves. So yeah, when you just said that, it reminded me of that quote. I love it so much. I wish I knew who said it. I feel bad. But yeah, it's just like we are as powerful as we believe ourselves to be. So, and it takes some time for people to believe their own power, and it's hard work. It really is. Took me years, and I still work on it continuously every day. I think it's a daily practice, but it took me a long time to even think that I had personal power, and just it took me a while to stop reaching externally for so much, and to just finally turn it in that focus inward for a while, and then come back to some guidance and support, but know that I play the majority of the role um, in that. So yeah, it's I love that you mentioned that.
So beautiful. Yeah, you said it. Like, it's like we can't do it alone. We can't. But yet
Right.
we are what it takes, you know? So
Exactly.
it's like that striving for balance. Like, can you imagine a world where, like, this new paradigm is coming to life of, more flexibility, more intuition, more self-trust, more um, really getting to have heart-centered decision making.
The divine feminine is rising.
Yes, yes. Can you imagine
Tot
a world where, like, we say goodbye to, like, rigidity and perfectionism
Oh
and,
my
like, structures that have maybe worked in the past, but that are, like, clearly not working now? Like, I just imagine, like, what that would be like, and there's times where I'm so overwhelmed by how much it would take to get there.
right,
And, like, that's exactly where this comes full circle of, like, it's all present moment, like, it's all happening already, but, like, we have to find those moments now to know that to keep going will be worth it, and
right.
to see these plants that we've been planting seeds for this whole time will be worth relishing in and getting to, foster.
Totally. Oh my god. I love everything you just said, and it's interesting because how you're, like, saying, "Can you imagine what it would be like?" And it's like, honestly, I I can, but I part of me really can't, and it's crazy that you can't imagine what a society that values, more of that, like, divine feminine, the rest and the flow and the intuition and less of this structured, linear, um goal-oriented society is. It's like we're so embedded into that, that it's so hard to see what it could be like, but I think that
Mhm.
we have to, and then what you were saying in the beginning, how, like, it feels so, out of character, like, so against the grain of what everyone else is doing. But I think, like, as individuals, it is our radical responsibility to, even though it feels wrong, to break those standards as much as we can, just little by little. Like, I, have released guilt for taking days where I just like rest and replenish my own self and do the things that fill me up. And it used to be like I would take a day to do things like that and I would feel so guilty that I wasn't in production mode and doing this, doing that. And I think a lot of people are in this sort of mentality of like, if I don't get something done, I'm a failure, or I'm not. They value that part of themselves so much. And it took me a lot of unlearning, I will say, that the rest is just as important as the work. And I had to release so much, um, just so many of my underlying beliefs about what it means to slow down and take time and be more in my feminine energy. Because as I said before, I was, years ago, or not even years ago, but I was taking Adderall, and Adderall I think really fed this masculine energy of mine, and I think caffeine does something similar to people where it's like go 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 go, sort of just on this really linear mentality of achievement. And part of releasing this like addiction to Adderall was mostly this like addiction to production and doing and valuing that over anything else. So yeah, it's interesting when you say, can I imagine a world like that? And yes, I can dream it in my head and I love it. I love being able to think of a place where that I guess, more feminine energy can coexist with this very masculine world that we live in. And I think that it is 100% on the rise. The divine feminine is emerging, whether we know it, can see it or not. Um, yeah, so I can see it, but it's interesting because I think that the world operates in a way where it's like it's hard to imagine, It is really hard to imagine. Um, but yeah, it's just very interesting, and I actually am really curious to know. I know, in your business, you work with, um, families and children specifically, and you're a teacher. You teach people. You have taught me so much. Um, is it part of your work to, help students of yours and parents learn or unlearn to sort of negate this, like, way of being in terms of like discovering and unfolding their own personal power and sort of like living in ways that kind of goes against the way that society operates? Is that something that you actively seek in your work?
Most definitely. It's kind of like when you just shared your vulnerability of like your different cycles and you're wanting to achieve balance, right? Whether that's through addiction or patterns or even thoughts. Like, oh my gosh, it comes up so much with clients that I work with, right? Of like, we're working with really real extremes, and there are really real needs underneath the extreme behaviors, right? We can judge the
Mhm.
behaviors, or we can say, this is teaching me something. It's happening for a reason, and I have a lesson to learn here. And until I can learn that, I can integrate it. I can pull it into my experience. It doesn't have to be a flaw. It just gets to be part of who I am. It gets to be a lesson. It gets to be the path, right? Because those are all ways to like accept the reality of what has occurred or what is occurring.
Right.
And I think with parents so much, there's this really big fight against reality. And we're like in a big disagreement with reality because there are things that we wish and we wanted and we hoped, right? Like we're dispelling so many fantasies of like how we wanted things to go.
Mhm.
It's this big thing of like, I didn't get what I wanted. This isn't how it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And oh my gosh, my children are not getting what they want, and they're finding ways to express that or whatever it is. But what this also reminded me of is like when kids show up in really, really high energy, they're just looking for tools to find balance, right? We don't want them
Right.
to completely shut it down. We want them to find that happy medium. Same with kids
Mhm.
who show up presenting really low energy or like depressed symptoms, right? Like we don't want them
Mhm.
to like cheer up completely. We want them to find the balance. And so like something that I do play therapy with kids aside from the parent coaching with parents. And when I get to meet with kids, like the only thing I'm doing the whole time is I'm just like holding up the mirror. And
Totally.
the entire time, everything that they share with me, whether it's spoken or unspoken, I just hold it up. And I'm not adding any fuel to the fire. I'm not like saying what I think or believe about it. I'm saying how I think, believe, and feel and sense in response to existing with them. So not only do they get to see how they appear in the world and see how they're taken in the world, right? It's this piece of we can't do it alone, right? Like we have to have
Mhm.
feedback from others. We have the mirror neurons from others. We sense from others whether or not we're accepted or rejected or somewhere in between. But people get to see themselves. And not only is that tricky and hard, it's like, oh my gosh, I might not like that thing about myself.
Mhm.
Whoa, this is a place where I get to not like that thing about myself? Huh.
It's so interesting.
You
It's
know,
hard to see yourself.
it's real. It's so real.
Mhm.
And like, think of all the projections that can come up too in the middle of
Totally.
like showing someone how they are. It's a very
Oh,
big
yeah.
risk in terms of like, let me respond to you authentically and genuinely with no filter. Because is that how we operate in the world? No, we're
Mm-mm.
clients, we're people pleasers. We've learned to stuff our feelings, we've learned to suppress, we've learned to cope in unhealthy ways. And like, is that really what we want? We've been convinced that that's how it is. And like, let's fall in
Mhm.
line. And I think, for people like us who are ready to ascend and ready to like lift people up with us and say, hey, let's do this together, right? It's like
Yeah,
we've experienced like enough of that on our own. It's like, okay, I get it. Enough is enough. Like I'm ready to do something different, and
totally.
obviously that's my hope with my clients too, of like I continue to show them the truth and they decide their own pace, their own tempo, their own rhythm of their process because like as a clinician, I trust that they know the journey for them. I'm not going to sit there and say, this is the direction we have to go today. It's like they get to trust that where they're going is exactly where they need to be led. So it's like
Totally.
pretty groundbreaking. And it's
It
also like
is.
that aspect of being so unbelievable because it's like it's so not how the world is
Right.
currently, even though we're in
Right.
this massive transition.
Totally. Oh my God, that is so cool. The work you're doing could not be more important. And I'm just grateful to know somebody like you who is, making it their life's work or life's current work right now. To, yeah, just share that information, share that knowledge, and hold a container for people who are, um, doing their own transcendence. And I just think that there's going to be more people like you. It might be a slow progression, but I really think that you're at like the pinnacle. You're kind of trailblazing this, and is really really awesome to see. Um, and I can't wait to bring my kids to you. I just think it's so cool what you're doing, and it's such important work. And you're right, it's like we don't operate like that as a society or as a culture, and like that's not how households operate or schools operate. So um, it's really really important to have space and time for children and parents to have the opportunity to do that. And I also really thought it was interesting when you said, people come in, and when you do hold this mirror to people, it is hard. I never would want to, um, you know, be insensitive to how hard that can be. Like it's scary. You have this vision for the way you want your life to go, and you're holding it in your head, and no matter how much you want it, and it might not always be that way. And when we have to hold the mirror up to ourselves and see that reflection and see who we are, it can be the most difficult thing in the world to, not have what you have seen and wanted for yourself. Um, and I think it sort of, for me, has always come back to this place of, well, it wasn't always like this, but what I've learned from um, constantly putting this mirror in front of myself and having to look inward and doing that work, um, is finding this concept of, it's the law of polarity, but it's more so just being able to see, okay, yes, this is not how I wanted this to go. And right here, I'm feeling like this is now an obstacle in my life. Whether it's me not getting something that I wanted, or somebody in my life is now gone, or whatever it is, wherever people right now, maybe they're feeling like, okay, I'm hitting an obstacle in my life. And I eventually learned to, the law of polarity is that, for one, um, given there is always an opposite factor on the other side of it. So when we see an obstacle in front of us, we have to remember the law of polarity here, that there is always on the other side of it an opportunity. So just trying to always find the opportunity where everyone else, or where myself would used to see obstacles, has been really helpful for me. And just noticing, like, okay, yes, this is not how I wanted it to go. This is clearly an obstacle in my face. Where's the opportunity? Now I'm going to go pursue the opportunity from this, because there is no, real, I think, value in, uh, I guess, what is the word that I'm looking for? I guess, stewing in the obstacle, or just, um, yeah, being in it for too long and fixating on it. We have to, move past to find the obstacle, or to find the opportunity, to find the lesson. And eventually, my goal for my work, and what I hope for everybody in any of their um, obstacles, is to come to a place eventually where you can find gratitude for your own adversity, because then you are able to see how it shaped you, and how it's putting you in this path of alignment, and how it is part of your unique, soul blueprint. And it's so difficult to find that gratitude and that opportunity in the beginning. um, it's definitely like a flexed muscle to to be able to, like, find that opportunity, and it's not easy for me, um, to this day, but, it has gotten so much easier, and I think that that is, one way that has helped me when I hold the mirror up, and when I'm looking at, "Okay, this is something that I don't like about myself, and that is uncomfortable, and that's okay." Where's the opportunity in learning, and, like, where is the lesson here? And I can see that you do a lot of that with your clients, and finding the beauty in those moments, and I just think it's really awesome work that you do.
Wow. And like what you said, it's like you're so onto something, right? Of like, when we're in it, we think it's never going to end. And like our
Mhm.
brain is just keeping us safe. And we're like trying to protect like our perception of the world. It's like it can be so threatening to be in a place that's scary because, if we're thinking that it's always going to be this way, it's like it's hard to um, get to that next step when you're in it. And like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I know this about you. And And like, if you want to share it all of like, yeah, just how your adverse life experiences have led you down to your path, and even just sharing about like, you know, your coaching and your mission, because you have a
Yeah.
huge mission. Oh my
Thank you. Yes, yeah, I'm happy to share. I definitely think that um I've had like different weights of adversity, if that makes sense. Like I've gone through things that in my heart carry different weight to them. Um but yeah, when I was 19, my dad unexpectedly passed away skiing. And I, at this time in my life, was, let's see, I was a sophomore in college, and I had absolutely no idea what my life was going to look like. It was an absolute, it turned my world upside down for sure. And at the same time, I was battling an eating disorder, very closeted eating disorder that absolutely nobody knew about. And I was taking Adderall to help sustain this way of life in terms of not eating sufficiently and all of these things. So this was kind of all happening at once. Um, but I wasn't in pursuit of healing it from the core. I always like wished that I didn't have an eating disorder, and I always wished that I wasn't taking Adderall, but I wanted to remain the same way of living and just have those like factors away. And then when my dad passed away, it was like, okay, I don't have the capacity to deal with all of these things at once. So I didn't really deal with any of them. Um, and I just kind of found myself in this place of confusion, but in this place of, I know I need to change something, and but I don't know how to. Um, so yeah, that happened. I went through that, and again, for anyone listening to this, and how I was saying, finding the opportunity in the midst of adversity or finding gratitude for your adversity, I did none of that. There was no gratitude for my adversity. It was way beyond my even thought process back then, to be able to do something like that, or to find any yeah, opportunity in that. I just could not see the other side. Um, and then, yeah, so for a few years, I sort of just continued. I just kept living. Um, but I always felt like there was this like burning fire within me that just wanted to be unleashed. I knew that this wasn't the way that I was wanting to live. Like I knew that there was more for me, and you know, I at this point had worked on grieving my father, and had kind of gone through the motions with that, you know, like went to grief therapy, but and did what I was told, but it never felt like this like really genuine way of grief. Um, and you know, for anyone who's lost a parent, I think that they can understand there's this sort of like uh, feeling of you kind of just have to grow up really quickly. You know, it obviously takes a toll on your other parent, and you see that everyone grieves differently, and so I felt very alone in that pursuit. But I continued to do it, and then eventually, I think I just was so fed up with the way that my life was going, um, that I said, all right, I am going to start with the one thing that I absolutely cannot stand anymore. I can't go one more day um, with an eating disorder. I just can't. You know, I'm gonna have this grief of my dad for the rest of my life, and I will pursue healing that. But I can't focus on anything because my mind is wrapped up in what my next meal is or what my next meal is not. And so I just said, I have to start here. I have to heal this part of me. And it wasn't, I tried going to therapy before, but I think my pursuits in toward healing my eating disorder were so um, also concerned with, yeah, I want to heal, but not at the expense of gaining weight, or not at the expense of this, or not at the expense of giving up Adderall. So I wasn't fully willing to commit to this like core wound that I really, um, lived with. And it wasn't until I surrendered to this idea that I was going to heal no matter what it took. And then I could deal with the outcome of whatever happened. Like I had to let go. And I love thinking about whenever I think about people who are holding on to something, whether it's an eating disorder or a way of life or something that they just can't give up. The scene in Finding Nemo when Marlin and Dory are in the whale, and he's holding onto the whale's tongue, and the tongue's trying to blow them out of his hole with the water, and Marlin is just holding on to that tongue for dear life, and Dory's like telling him, just let go. The whale is telling us to let go. And he says, how do you know that? And she says, I don't. And he lets go, and he makes it to Sydney, Australia. It felt like it, I think that it begs for this moment of surrender. You don't know how it's going to go, but you have to just trust. You just have to let go. And once I let go, and I did get guidance and support, I hired a coach to help me out of it. Um, but I also did the work on my end, and I knew that, this is my journey and my healing, and she's just guiding me. Once I let go and had that understanding, things just started to click. I really, overcame it pretty efficiently. And then one thing led to the other, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna get off of Adderall. Like, this is not serving me. I wanted to do this for so long. Um, and freeing those things out of from my life really has given me so much space to properly grieve my dad and think about him and celebrate him and be with that feeling, because for so long it was just like, I want this feeling out of me, and I was never willing to feel any of these things. And so now, sorry, this is very long-winded, but so now my mission, my mission is to really help other people transcend out of their own toxic cycles, whatever that looks like for them. I really, am eventually going to gear my work toward helping people um, liberate from eating disorders and Adderall addiction. I think that's a very niche, specific, um, yet very not talked about topic. And I think that it needs so much attention, but there is so much shame wrapped up in it. There is so much there. And so I've just continued to talk about it relentlessly. But for anyone dealing with any cycle or different toxic whatever behavior they feel like they're engaging in, and they have like wanted to get out for years but don't know how to, it's my mission to help them reclaim their own power, as we were talking about in the beginning. Love that idea. And to ascend out of their self limitations and really come back to themselves, to a place of, okay, yes, this is something I'm going through, but I'm capable of getting out of it. And then my goal is for them to find some sort of gratitude for this adversity and for their own unique journey, because it's bringing them closer to who their authentic self is, which is so beautiful and such a cool thing to be able to see yourself do, is to come back to yourself a little bit more. So yeah, that is what I am doing with my life currently, and it is my absolute passion. Yeah, thank you for giving me the space to talk about that. I really appreciate it.
Course, and like you just so graciously and so gracefully hold people and are willing to see people in the mess. Like you
Thank
get to like help people like identify their messiness and like not have pressure to change, not have any pressure to be different. Like they get
Right.
to be who they are unconditionally, like fully. And like that is such a gift. Like
Thank you
I don't
so
know if you know
much.
how powerful that is. Like that is
Thank you.
such a gift. Like and then not to mention the immense grief and loss. Like, oh my God.
It was a
The gift
lot.
of that. Yeah.
It is as crazy as it sounds. There is a gift in it, and um especially knowing that like my dad can still see me, and I truly believe that. I feel his spirit with me. Um and it's also taught me it's like he's teaching me things that he maybe never could have here on earth. He's teaching me on the other side. So it is a gift, as crazy as that sounds. And again, for anyone listening, death is I would never it is absolutely tragic and the hardest. Absolutely, I've never had to challenge my emotions more than going through that. It is could not be you know, more uncomfortable and heartbreaking, and those feelings are so real. But there is this gift in it that like they are teaching us perhaps something that they never ever could have during their time on Earth, and that is part of their own contract with the universe. I believe that fully. But then how you were also saying that allowing people to be where they are and meet themselves where they are in their mess. I love it. Here's another quote. I don't know why I'm like memorizing all these quotes, but it used to be my screensaver. That's why I know it. And it's something like, I will never have this version of myself again. How can I slow down and be with her? And I just love that because we never forget that. We always are trying to move forward and be the next version of ourselves. And it's like, well, how can I be with myself right here now? What does that look like? It's so interesting.
Like if evolution is inevitable, like can we surrender to that and know that we're
Exactly.
always going to be growing and changing and like we'll
Mhm.
always want the next best thing for ourselves because like that's who we are. We want to invest in ourselves and in our evolution and like wow,
So
like
true.
so moving to know that like if we slow down right now, that's just as rewarding and just as beneficial for our entire process. Like, even if we don't know how
Totally.
it's gonna look or what this version of us needs right in this minute, we won't know unless we slow down to find out, or we won't know until like this version of ourselves is here to tell us. If we're
Completely.
moving too much, we might miss that.
That's so true. I love that evolution is inevitable. It is. It will happen even if we don't want it to. So why can't we just slow down and be here with ourselves? Because transformation is going to happen no matter what. I love that. It's inevitable. It's so cool.
And to give ourselves that credit, right? Like that it doesn't
Totally.
have to be this out of this world kind of thing. Like, can we find the small transformations that like all add up to the big thing?
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. 1000%. The small little wins.
Mhm.
Yes. It's so awesome. You're the coolest, Jennifer. You're the easiest person to talk to about the most expansive, like like abstract topics. I could just pick your brain for so long. It's amazing.
And it was seriously
I
so, so
love your insight.
to have you today. Like, I feel beyond blessed that this conversation got to happen. And
You too. I'm so grateful for you.
same. And where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work and they want to find out more about your story and all kinds of stuff that you offer?
Yeah, I am most active on Instagram, I'd say these days, and you can find me at spiritual wellness underscore and you. Or I have a website, it's Ellie Gervais, GerVais.com, and that will give you my whole backstory, um, and just sort of the services that I provide in my work. And yeah, I'd say those are the two places where you can chat with me and email me, and those are my number one spaces, I'd say. So
Well,
thank you.
yes, I just want to say thank you so much for doing what you're doing in the world and
Thank you.
moving people to their next level. It's really, really beautiful.
Thank you so much, and same to you. Thank you for doing your work, for being your amazing self, for giving so much so selflessly. And thank you for being my friend. I value your friendship so much, and you teach me more than you will ever know. Truly, I give you so much credit for a lot of my endeavors because you spur this amount of inspiration in me every single time that I'm with you. So I'm so grateful for you.
Well, it's so mutual, and I can't wait until the next one.
I know, I'm so excited. Maybe I'll start a podcast and have you on.
Yes.
Okay, it's so amazing to see your beautiful face, and we'll be in touch. I'll talk to you soon.
That sounds beautiful.